Hello and welcome back to Three Princesses in a Muggle World. My name is Jenny and I am joined as always by my two best friends and co-hosts.
Hey everyone, it's Amber.
And Kasey, welcome back.
Yes,
Woo!
welcome back.
We
Or
actually
welcome back to
have
me since I wasn't here last week.
we have all three of us back at it again. So we got a
Woo!
wonderful show planned. And since this was Jenny's brainchild, do you want to tell us what we're doing tonight?
Oh, I have so many children on this show. We're just going with it. Okay, moving on. So, this idea came from actually several years ago. I was at a game night at Amber's house, and I don't even remember what game we were playing. I think it was like Guess Who or something like that. We all had Disney characters, and some of the questions were like, is this character a human? And I'm like, well, if you go by the Pixar theory, and I did not make a lot of friends that night.
I do not remember this at all.
But
Just
I mean, to be fair, I was already friends with Amber by that point, so at least she didn't disown me. So yeah, we're talking about the Pixar theory tonight. I should have written down who first came up with the Pixar theory. Do you have that somewhere, Kasey?
I have the name of the gentleman that actually wrote a book on it. I don't know if he necessarily was the creator, but he definitely published first.
Well, let's give his name because I think he was one of the first, anyways.
Okay, his name is not John Negroni. I guess he is a film critic or a book critic, something critically. And he published, didn't post, he published a book called The Pixar Theory back in 2015. So obviously his theory doesn't take into account newer Pixar movies, but he worked on this for quite a while and he has a website dedicated to it and published regarding this theory.
So I am not sure when the Pixar theory first came out or came about or anything, but I think most of it really stems from the fact that in every single Pixar movie there are Easter eggs for other Pixar movies. Like you can find the Pizza Planet truck in every Pixar movie and just different things like that. Like for example, Boo in Monsters Inc., she has a Finding Nemo in her room that she gives to Sully, and that was also before Finding Nemo came out. And I think she also gave Sully a Jessie doll, so everything's just kind of connected that way. And so I think that just kind of led to one thing led to another, and the Pixar theory came to be. So tonight we will be talking about the Pixar theory, and we will be going in order chronologically of how the Pixar theory thinks the movies happened. I'm going to say the word again, chronologically.
so
Chronologically in terms of like the world timeline, not when they came out, right?
Yep.
yes.
Okay. Just want to make
So
that
going
clear.
along those same Easter eggs, I recently saw a TikTok where a guy found an Easter egg in Monsters Inc. as well, and that is the bedroom where the one monster comes out and he's freaking out because the kid almost touched him. And the kid was she was supposedly 6 years old or something like that. Well, when you see him exit the room, you get a glimpse of the room really quickly. And if you pause it, there's a movie poster in that room, and it is the same movie poster hanging in Sid's room from Toy Story.
Wow.
It makes sense, guys. That's all I'm saying.
It's just
But the only
crazy.
issue that I'm having is it was a girl. It was a 6-year-old girl, which, yes, I do get that, his sister probably didn't scare extremely easily considering it's his sister. But why does she have that poster in her room instead of. That's where I'm like, what? But yeah, that was another little Easter egg that I recently discovered.
Okay, so shall we dive into the theory?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it. So we have, so far in Pixar, they have, what did we say, 26 movies? Is that what we landed on? 24.
I believe so. Yeah,
So
24.
they have 24 at the moment movies. We're not going to cover them all tonight. We're going to try and get through half of that list. So we'll talk about the first half of this supposedly chronological connection in the Pixar universe. And let's start at the very beginning. Literally.
Okay, so the very beginning, we have The Good Dinosaur. So, The Good Dinosaur is a movie that is about dinosaurs, obviously. But also, in this one, instead of the meteor hitting the Earth and all that, it flies past the Earth. And so we have an alternate, like, history of the Earth where dinosaurs and humans actually exist together. And so in this movie, they are together, and the dinosaurs call humans critters because in the movie, the dinosaurs are more intelligent than the humans. And so they are trying to get rid of this one critter, the main dinosaur family, which is the long necks. What's that technical term? I don't know. Whatever. The long neck dinosaurs. Because
Oh no.
Is that Bronchiosaurus?
Maybe?
I think so. We'll go with it.
Go with it.
And that they're the main the story is mainly set around that family, and they're trying to get rid of a critter, and they end up the youngest and smallest of the Bronchiosaurus end up going off on an adventure with this critter and connecting and becoming best friends, and it's all la-di-da-di-do.
Okay, so for the theory. So the theory for this, now I'm not familiar with this movie. It's just not only is it the start of Good Dinosaur is the starting point for this Pixar theory. It's not only, the start of early human life, but it's the start of our Pixar universe. There's not a whole lot to this part of it. It's just this is the start. This is where we are beginning on this Pixar theory journey.
Exactly. So the next one that we have is Brave. And I love Brave just because I have curly red hair and she has curly red hair and it's a good time. But Brave is about this girl. Her name is Merida. She's Scottish. She's a princess. And her parents are like, hey, by the way, you have to get married. And we're going to have these different tribes come and their sons are pretty much going to compete for your hand. And this girl is having none of it. Her Merida, I'm sorry, I don't know why I didn't say her name. Merida's having none of it because she's just like, first of all, the sons from these different clans are horrible looking, and I'm not about to marry them because not good looking at all. And also, I want to take care of myself because I'm awesome like that. And so she just says that she's going to shoot for her own hand and with like bow and arrow. And her mom gets upset because her mom thinks that she needs to act like a lady, and she gets upset. And so she kind of like runs off and she finds this witch, and the witch is like, oh yeah, I can take care of that for you. Ends up turning her mom into a bear, and her 3 little brothers end up turning into bears. And Merida has to find a way. What?
Sorry. I just think the little brothers as the bears are adorable. So I said they're so adorable. It's fine.
So Merida has to go on this little adventure with her mom as a bear to find out how to turn her mom back into a human. And it's a good time. Also, kind of a side note, but if you watch Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and when Vanellope goes and meets like all the Disney princesses, they make a comment about how nobody can understand Merida because she's from the other studio, because she is like the only princess in Pixar.
Yep. Okay, so this is 14th century, and we've got witches, and there's portals and different things like that. Yeah, and then one of the carvings in the witch's cabin looks like Sully, and that. And there's also several different wooden bears, which makes sense for that particular movie. But the theory is basically that, this continues on bringing us closer to our current time frame, and so we've just moved on a little bit in history. We went from being in
Actually,
prehistorics to,
may I
yeah,
cut in?
yes.
This movie is actually a very big part of the Pixar theory because this witch does have that carving of Sully, and when she uses the portals, she goes through doors. Just kind of let that seep in, and it will come back to haunt you at a later time.
Okay. Now, I'm already having kind of an issue buying into this theory, and this is where it also gets a little bit tricky because when this theory was originally being talked about, particularly by John Negroni, obviously the Good Dinosaur did not exist yet. It came out in, I think you said 2015?
Yeah, somewhere around there, 2015,
Around.
2016.
So that was after he was already talking about this theory, and he did say on his website he is looking into those now as well to add them. But if I'm to understand correctly, the Good dinosaurs were never killed off. So now we're in 14th century with Brave. Where are the dinosaurs?
They're hiding somewhere. That's not Scotland.
So, but I mean, that's kind of where it's starting to lose me already because if they were never killed off, if that's the whole story of this is the start of Pixar universe, the dinosaurs never died, where are they? Obviously, something has happened in between the start and now 14th century. So, where are my dinosaurs?
Kasey just wants her stinking dinosaurs, guys. And honestly, I don't have an answer for you.
I'm just saying, this is where, yeah, I'm kind of like, okay, wait a minute. Does this actually fit into Pixar theory now? And it's very well possible that they will put in another movie, another Pixar movie that takes place in between, timeline-wise, The Good Dinosaur and Brave, maybe have an explanation. But this is where it's hard for me to accept it, because if dinosaurs lived, where are the dinosaurs now in Brave? And where are they in the rest of Pixar?
Yeah.
This
I
is
see
where,
your point.
yeah, this is where I'm like, okay, something's not working for me here. But I digress.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I've got lots of questions on this theory. Like, I'm not against trying to connect movies, and there are definitely Easter eggs. We've talked about some of the Easter eggs, but I feel like some of this theory is just trying to connect those Easter eggs in a way that it's not meant to be connected. It's just, part of me is like, those Easter eggs are just there for fun, not necessarily there because all the movies are connected. But
So I do have to admit that I don't technically believe in this theory because, as you guys have pointed out, there are a bunch of holes. But I just like using this theory because not a lot of people know it. So I like to poke the bear and be like, but
And,
yeah,
it's very possible that the theory makes total sense, 10 years ago when it was a big thing that people were discussing with just those movies. It's very possible, and we'll probably come back to this throughout, this podcast and the next part two, where they keep making Pixar movies, obviously, that maybe they just no longer fit into the theory. Maybe the theory only works for earlier stuff, but
yeah.
let's see. Let's continue to talk about it. Let's see if we can make sense of this.
continuing on.
All right. Next, we're making another huge jump. We're now in the 1950s, so going a couple centuries, and we're talking about The Incredibles 1. This is about superheroes. And I gotta admit, maybe I'm alone here. This is never read as a 1950s, but that's a whole nother thing. Apparently, my co-hosts agree that it doesn't have a 50s vibe to it. But anyway, it's about superheroes. It's about how superheroes were the greatest. They helped people, they saved people, but then one tiny little mistake got all superheroes banned. And we kind of see the aftermath. A lot of the ex superheroes just kind of morph into daily life, and they kind of accept their now more mortal status, even though they still have their powers. But we come along to Mr. Incredible, who has a really hard time adjusting into normal life. He's not normal. His family's not normal. He's married to Elastigirl. All his kids, well, in this movie, 2 of his kids have powers. He's just having a really hard time accepting normalcy, and he gets an opportunity to not be normal, to be a superhero, to kind of have a midlife crisis and bring back the old days, and that's the movie. He gets to relive his youth and kind of make steps to accepting superheroes back into society.
Okay, so a little bit about the Pixar theory. There are some parts of it that I totally don't agree with because it's making Pixar out to be like we're against all of like pretty much humanity. So I'm just gonna state that right now. Because like this next one, well, this one that Kasey just talked about, The Incredibles, makes it out to be like the U.S. government are the ones who created the first superheroes, and they started to like harness emotions and everything. And then of course we see that the superheroes, like Kasey said, words are hard, y'all.
They start dying out.
Yeah, well, it's not even that, but like people don't believe in them anymore. And so because of that, that's why a lot of the superheroes just didn't do work anymore, and Syndrome comes in and he tries to take over, and there are super corporations called By and Large. That is a name that you're going to want to remember for later on in the theory, and it is what makes use of AI technology that Syndrome like uses to defeat the superhero. So Syndrome is just, I mean, he's a genius kind of. We don't like him, but he's a genius. And the government and these big corporations took that technology and kind of used it for emotional purposes, I guess is what it's saying.
So, my issue, in a sense, with this part of the theory is I also agree with Kasey. I did not get 50s vibes from the movie. I got like early 2000 vibes from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of my disagreement. But then my other part is the whole like they created the first superhero like the US government did by harnessing emotions and stuff like that. Because a lot of their superpowers are not necessarily emotional based. And as well as if you go by that theory, how did the supers create their own children that were then supers? Like, because I feel like there had to have been some sort of like mutation at that point in time for it to happen. And I don't know, maybe it's my lack of knowledge of the science behind that part of the theory, but I just feel like that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I get the 50s vibe off of it. I don't know about the government creating superheroes, but I could see the government using those superheroes for like to help them with the public emotionally. And I feel like you do see that a lot in The Incredibles, where when the superheroes are there, it's good. This is a good thing until Mr. Incredible saves somebody who was trying to commit suicide. And then it's like, nope, the supers are bad. This is a bad thing. And then it just goes around in a circle.
Oh yeah, the government definitely like used the supers to their advantage, and they were only sorry, they only used them when it benefited them. Like when it stopped benefiting them and when using the supers was costing the government money, then the government was like, nope, never mind, we don't like this idea. They're not good for us. And so I definitely agree that the government used the supers to their advantage and then pushed them to the side when they were no longer useful to them.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said before, though. If this is all the same universe, where are the supers? It's not like they could have just died out in the 60s because we see that they can have kids and those powers get passed on to kids. So wouldn't there be a bunch of supers running around in other movies? Even like a little brief mention in the background of, oh, there was a huge incident in South America that the supers took care of for us. There's no mention, so
Well,
Yeah.
there's another idea. I don't even know if it's a part of this theory, where in Monsters Inc., when like the different monsters are explaining Boo, and some of the ways that they describe it almost sound like Jack and his powers. So maybe they were seeing Jack and not Boo.
But Jack wasn't there.
You don't know
I
that.
don't know.
We never saw him. You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's possible. So, continuing on in our 50s, 60s vibe, we immediately jump into Incredibles 2, and that which continues on with following the Incredibles family, and we learn that Jack does have powers. Incredibles too. So we definitely learn that Jack for sure does have powers, and he's learning how to control them. And Mr. Incredible becomes like he becomes a stay-at-home dad, and Mrs. Incredible gets to go work and all that stuff. So that's Incredibles too.
Okay.
so is the theory for this one kind of similar to Incredibles 1, Jenny?
That's kind of what I'm getting, except Incredibles 2 does show another super corporation, including a telecommunications company owned by Winston DeVore. DeVore?
Second, I'll pop up later. Is that important?
No, just super corporations in general, mostly the by and large one, will pop up again later.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's still just we had all these supers. Where are they at? Where are the
Yeah.
dinosaurs? Where are the supers? It's making it hard for me to buy into everything is connected when we
I
have
do believe that the supers could die out because yes, we have Elastigirl marrying Mr. Incredible. I almost said Incrediboy. No. And so of course they're gonna have like superhero children, but like Frozone and Honey, like I'm pretty sure Honey is not a superhero. So there's less of a chance of them having superhero children. And it kind
okay.
of just reminds me of Harry Potter and
Yeah,
Pure
that's
Bloods
where I
and
was
stuff
gonna
like
go.
that.
Just because
What? That's where
one
you're gonna go?
parent, that's where I was gonna go. Just because you got one parent that's not super or magic does not mean your children aren't gonna be.
But it also
Mhm.
doesn't mean that just because you have one that is, that your children are going to be.
And it also doesn't mean that you could have non-super parents and have a super child.
That's also true.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm
I feel
I'm
like it's
more
more of like, what do we know about the supers, which is not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think just based on the Incredible Family, since it's not powers that are passed down themselves, because the kids all have different powers. No one gets incredible strength like the father, no one gets super elasticity like the mother. They each have their own individual powers. So I don't think it needs to have two super parents because you're not getting their powers, you're getting your own unique powers. So to me, that says as long as you have one parent that's carrying the power gene, the super gene, then your kid can get it.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just saying that there's also a chance that they won't. Like, there's a chance that they will, but there's also a chance that they won't. It's the equal chance.
Yeah.
But it's just not logical to think that every single child that comes after is going to miss that chance, you know?
Well, not every single one, but if Violet marries Tony Robinson, is that his name?
Remember.
Tony Ridinger, that's his name. If Violet marries Tony Ridinger, and let's say she has a non-super child, or even that she does have a super child, maybe she has one of each, but suddenly, before you know it, there's going to be more non-supers than there are going to be supers.
But they're still going to exist, is my point.
Yeah.
Even if the numbers are small, supers are going to still exist in some shape or form. So why is it not talked about in any other movie? That's my point.
Okay.
I see your point. Okay, next movie.
Okay. So the next movie is Luca, which I've actually just recently seen. One of the main reasons why I decided I had to see it is because it's another movie talking about how we don't talk about Bruno, or in this case, Silenzio Bruno. And this movie is pretty much about two sea monsters who decide that they want a Vespa so that they can go see the world. So they become human because if you're not in the water, then you can become human. And they enter a bicycle race with a human girl. And that's actually it. Like, that's the main
Yeah,
premise of the
that's the gist
story.
of the story.
I was gonna say something else, and then I realized there was nothing else. So there was that silence. But that's like the premise of the story.
They want a Vespa and they enter in a race. That's it.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That's the gist of the story.
There's actually a TikTok making fun of that idea, so just so we're clear.
Does somebody win the race?
I don't remember who wins. Don't
I
they
feel
end
like
up winning?
they do win, but it also starts raining in the middle of the race. So in the middle of the race, all the humans find out that they're sea monsters, and so there's that controversy. But then they make it so that it's okay for humans and sea monsters to live together because there's actually like sea monsters that have been living with the humans for like years and they just haven't known. And so it's kind of like that whole I am Sparta thing where like, oh, leave these kids alone because look, I'm also a sea monster.
Yeah. So I just have to point out that this one also apparently takes place in the 50s and 60s. And my biggest issue with saying that they exist, that this movie happened at the same time as The Incredibles, is the amount of technology that happens in The Incredibles and the absolute lack of technology in Luca. My brain just cannot comprehend those two taking place at the same exact time.
Okay, here's another issue. So, if these are taking place in the same time frame, everyone knows what a super is, and for the most part, like, yes, there's bad press for supers, but they're aware and there's not a lot of fear. So, why is it an issue for sea monsters? Why couldn't they just be like, oh yeah, that's just another super, they just live in the ocean, it's whatever? Like, that doesn't jive with me. We have supers that can literally freeze things, can lift absolute and crazy amounts of weight, but scaly and swimming in the water is the boundary. That's the line. That's where it's crazy.
So
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you. However, I am pretty sure this town that Luca takes place in is one of those like very, very rural towns that probably doesn't even have TV. So I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that there may be a small chance that they don't know that supers exist in this very, very small
Well,
town.
true. They may not have TVs, but in the 50s, TVs were not in everybody's houses. They didn't rely on TV for news and stuff. They relied on newspapers and radios. So is this small town not have access to newspaper and radio, which is the only way to get world news?
And the other thing is the person that is running the race, like the person in charge of the race that is there that also fears sea monsters. He's not from that town. He is from one of the bigger towns, like out where they would know about supers. And so I still feel like Kasey's got a very good point. And if this is when this is taking place, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like I'm gonna
Let's
go
all
back
just
to what
agree that I'm like the devil advocate here. Well, Kasey really is, but I'm the one that's going to stick to the theory, even though I don't 100% believe it either.
Oh, I am not devil's advocate. I am tearing this theory apart.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so like I'm not, again, like I said, I don't disagree that in some aspects they may be connected, but I do feel like Luca and Incredibles taking place in the same decade just does not make sense to me. I feel like Luca had to have happened well before Incredibles happened. And
And to
like I
be
feel like
fair,
that decade doesn't make sense to me.
so to be fair, I did find this timeline on a different website than the one done by John. So it could be a little bit different, but the ideas are all the same. But yeah, I agree. I also like watching Luca. I wouldn't get the 50s vibe from watching it, except for the Vespa.
Yeah.
No, because I just looked up. They're in Italy. Vespas are very popular even now in Europe.
Well, I don't know when Vespas first became a thing. I thought it was more of an early 2000 thing, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know when the first Vespa was a thing.
1946.
No.
Okay, so it could have taken place in the 1950s.
Maybe
I know,
that's
but
where they
not-
got maybe that's where they got the date because Vespas didn't exist until the 1950s.
no.
And so,
Vespas were created in the 40s, and they are still very popular now.
well, yeah,
Well,
and I'm not
the end of the
saying like,
1940s.
yeah, I'm just saying like,
Again.
all I'm saying
Amber,
is
continue.
1950s. It just does not make sense for Luca and Incredibles to both be that same time frame. Because for me, there's such a lack of technology in Luca, even for this rural town, and so much technology in Incredibles. It just does not make sense to me that they're happening in the same decade. Like, I know there's rural towns out there. Like, I get that. I've been to some of those types of towns, but I still feel like there is such a mega difference between the two with the amount of technology in one, and that it just, I cannot wrap my head around them being in the same decade.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree, especially Incredibles 2. I feel like they bring in a whole lot more technology. And I've only seen it once, so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but like the whole Elastigirl, like the people that she's working for, they have so much technology going on that it's insane.
Yeah.
yes, there's a lot of technology in those two movies. And but moving on. Next movie.
All right. We're doing another pretty big time jump. We're going to the 90s now with Toy Story. And for those unfamiliar, I think everyone knows Toy Story. This is probably, in my opinion, the biggest Pixar movie. But it's about
Also, the first Pixar movie ever made.
yeah.
This
This is
recently just celebrated its release date.
oh cool.
I don't remember when, but I want to say it was end of May.
Well, anyway, Toy Story is a story about toys, duh. But we have this group of toys who is kind of led by this old cowboy sheriff. He's the favorite, and that gets to his head, and he has to deal with this brand new toy, this new space toy that comes into play and is the new favorite. And you know what? I'm going to go off on a little tangent here because it makes a lot more sense for Toy Story to be a 50s movie than it does Incredibles, but it's not. It takes place in the 90s. You know, with the whole cowboys and spacemen, that to me feels more 50s, doesn't it?
Especially because Andy is like really into the spaceman thing.
Yeah, and we had, a lot going on with NASA around that time frame. It makes a lot more sense that this would be because I mean, what kid, even in the 90s, what kid was all about cowboys or spacemen? 90s, I feel like it was very much about Pokemon and stuff like that.
Maybe we'll learn more about spacemen and also known as Buzz Lightyear in the new Lightyear movie, and like why in this universe spacemen were such a big thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I agree that there is some sort of like, this does not line up time frame wise for me either. Because again, I
Okay,
feel like jumping into the technology side, I feel like there's a lot more technology in The Incredibles than what even existed in the 90s.
yeah.
and I'm sure that like if you look into the different Pixar theories, that because I'm sure that not everybody has come to an understanding around this one, but I'm sure somewhere you could find where the Incredibles actually take place later, and humans, as we progress, we get superpowers, and then we
Yeah.
slowly turn into monsters, hence Monsters Inc.
See, I had got one of the theories that I had heard at one point in time is that Boo is actually Andy's mom.
I have seen that one.
I don't
That's
like
one
that.
of the theories. I actually love that theory because, it makes sense. She has a Jessie doll. And so, I like that theory. I'm all for that theory, but that theory does not fit in with this theory because with this timeline, that just doesn't fit.
And maybe at a later date, we'll just come up with all the different Pixar theories, but this is like the main one. So
Yeah.
we'll start with the main one, and then we're going to go to the ones that we actually agree with, where like The Incredibles take place right before Monsters, Inc. or something, and we'll go from there. But to continue on with Toy Story, the part of this Pixar theory is that the by and large that created the toys and they created those toys in order to harvest the power of human emotions. So, and we see that later on. I feel like this is like very brief in actual Toy Story, but you see it later on in Toy Story, like in 2 and 3 and 4, because Woody obviously has a mental coming apart in like every single movie, including Toy Story, when he feels like Andy doesn't love him anymore, and he tries to do all that he can to make sure that he's still Andy's favorite toy.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand this theory, all the toys are alive somehow based on the technology that Syndrome made, correct?
Yes.
That's like bare bones summary of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it purposeful or an accident?
I feel like when it comes to the toys, it's an accident. I feel like probably the only thing that was purposeful in this theory was making the supers in The Incredibles.
Okay, because I was gonna say, if it's purposeful, that makes absolutely no sense why they have to play like they're just your average toy. Andy's coming and fall down.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really look at it, you could probably also use Luca and those sea monsters in like the fact that humans are polluting the ocean, and maybe with some of the by and large technology that has polluted the ocean, and maybe that's made them into sea monsters. I don't know. That's actually not written in the theory. That just popped into my head just now. But it's more of a tie-in because there's not a lot of tie-in with Luca anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just comes back to where are the dinosaurs? Where are the supers? Why are they gone all of a sudden in the 90s, which I think would be probably a really good decade for supers to come back. I feel like there would definitely be toys of those around.
I feel like for our picture for this podcast, and I know it's really weird to talk about it on the podcast, but it should be like that newspaper clipping in The Incredibles where it's like, where are the supers?
Well, go ahead and make that one.
Okay. So, Amber, how about you tell us about Toy Story 2?
Okay, so Toy Story 2 is the sequel, and that it's still in the 90s. We're still dealing with like Woody and Buzz and their story and following them with Andy, and Andy's starting to grow up, and yeah.
And Woody gets stolen and meets a bunch of other toys who pretty much hate children because they've been treated badly by children.
Yeah.
So is this just the same theory then? They are alive, they are sentient because of Syndrome?
So it is the same thing, except you do need to like take note of that bubbling resentment that these toys are starting to feel towards the humans, especially like Stinky Pete. Like before I even know what a plot twist was, that's when I saw this movie and I was like, what? He's the bad guy? Totally threw me off. I mean, I also, as we all know, I'm not big into Star Wars, so the whole Zurg being Buzz's dad, like, when I quote that scene, it's not from Star Wars, it's from Toy Story 2. It's like, no, Buzz, I am your father.
The whole like, no, I'm the bad guy thing, all I could think of was Olaf in Frozen 2 when he's recapping the story of Hans and he goes, guess what? I'm the bad guy. And then you see the other guy go,
the one soldier is like, what?
that's like what I was picturing as you were saying that. I was like, "Hola."
I swear, I could probably quote that whole scene. Maybe I'll do it one of these days on TikTok.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're moving into Finding Nemo, also known as Finding No One. And when we get into more Pixar theories, we'll talk about the horrible Pixar theory of Finding Nemo, because it's horrible. But Finding Nemo is about a father who pretty much lost everything but one of his sons. And then he doesn't let that son pretty much do anything. I really should have looked up the explaining Finding Nemo badly because I'm not trying, but I feel like I'm trying. So, anyways, so he like overly protects his son. His son gets kidnapped by a dentist because we hate humans. And we all hate dentists. I'm sorry if we have any dentists listening, but let's be honest, nobody likes going to the dentist.
I don't mind.
And the father ends up meeting a friend, Dory, and they go on this epic adventure to find Nemo.
The movie.
Okay, so this theory, it continues to go back to syndrome. Is that what I'm gathering here?
Yes.
Okay. So because
I
of
don't know
whatever.
if syndrome is so much a part of Finding Nemo. It's more of the fact that like animals and like toys and different things like that are starting to have these resentful feelings towards humans.
But the reason they have those is because of whatever syndrome was creating. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, because yeah, they don't just wake up one day and I hate humans. There's a cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And who knows what syndrome was doing? He was probably doing all sorts of tests.
So my thing is though, if we are to believe that The Incredibles took place in the 50s and 60s, which I'm not fully on board with, how would we still see those effects, in the 90s with Toy Story and in the 2000s with Finding Nemo? How would we have, 40 plus years of these issues?
So syndrome started it, but other corporations like By and Large and stuff like that, they continued it. They took that technology, they made it their own, they made it bigger. It's kind of like in the early 90s, Apple got started or whatever. I don't know when it actually started, so don't come at me. And it's since just become bigger.
So my issue is not necessarily that we're still seeing the effects of stuff and that like corporations are the cause of like the intelligence level of the creatures and different things like that. My issue is echoing Kasey is if we have this technology and this is like we see the advancing technology and we're claiming that this technology is connected again, where are the supers? Because I feel like we still have supers around. I'm still not okay with the fact that we don't have supers but we have this technology.
With
Like,
Finding Nemo, I can understand why supers wouldn't be a big thing because we're focusing on the water. But what about Luca? Now I know Luca just came out in 2021, but Pixar chronological wise, it's the 50s. So if I'm just looking at the story, why is there no sea monsters in Finding Nemo? Which I know logically, again, this movie just came out last year. I'm sure Pixar didn't even know there were sea monsters until then. But if you're going to put it in the Pixar theory, then
the really big ocean.
And they swim across a really big ocean, so they should come into contact with at least one sea monster.
I
Maybe
agree.
there's no Australian sea monsters.
But there's
Okay.
but there's
No.
Never mind. I don't know. I don't have a comeback. Never mind. I had a thought, but then I realized, wait a second, no, that's not no, never mind.
Australian sea monsters have decided that they want to hang out with the humans because Australia is just that cool. Guys, I've never been to Australia, but if somebody listening can like make it so that me and like my parents can go to Australia, We'd like that.
I want to join. I want to go. Take me with you. Okay, so yeah,
Also, totally random, but have you noticed how, like, all over the place Pixar movies are? Like, Luca takes place in Italy. The next one that we're going to talk about, takes place in, like, Paris. It's just, like, all over the place. Like, Up, they go to South America. It's great. I love how diverse it is. Finding Nemo takes place in Australia.
Well, does it take place in Australia the entire time?
Well, I mean, they go to Sydney, but I guess you don't really know where they started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, Kasey, how about you tell us about our next rat-friendly movie?
Okay, so not too far off from Finding Nemo. I'm noticing with these movies, we're not taking as big of time jumps as we were at the start, but we're still in the 2000s. We're in 2007 with Ratatouille. And this is another animal-focused one. It is about a rat that has dreams of becoming a chef. That's what he wants to do. And he's very intelligent, way more intelligent than your typical rat. And he finds essentially a puppet to do his bidding to become a chef. Like that's really all he is. He's a puppet. What's his name?
He's a willing puppet, though. Linguini.
Linguini. Yeah. He finds Linguini, who is not very good at anything on his own, and they decide we gonna buddy up and we're gonna be great together. No one's gonna know. I'm gonna hide under your hat and we could become chefs. And that's basically the story. So I would love to hear how this fits into the theory. I'm assuming it's similar to Finding Nemo.
Yes. Also, before we jump into that, I just have this little side story because I always have little side stories. But I remember back in middle school, and Kasey's probably not going to remember this at all, but we would randomly talk about, like, I don't even know, but it was like kind of one-upping each other, and it wasn't like things that we actually did. It was just like quoting movies, and then I would always finish with, "I killed the man with this thumb," which is a quote from Ratatouille. And at first, Kasey had no idea what I was talking about, so it made it even better.
I mean, I remember that quote. I don't know why we would say it so much, but I remember the quote.
I don't know. We thought we were funny.
Okay, so how does this fit into the theory?
Okay, so it is, like Kasey said, pretty much like Finding Nemo. It's more and more of the animals and the things that are not, quote unquote, as intelligent as they should be. Well, that sounded bad. Rewind. Things that shouldn't be intelligent, like that us as humans would look like they're not that intelligent, actually having feelings and feeling resentment towards those humans. For example, the toys, the fish, now, not Remy, but like his whole clan of rats, they all hate humans. His dad's like, stay away from the humans. And then, not to mention the fact that, like Kasey said, this rat is so smart that he becomes the top chef in the world.
I don't know. All of this just seems like such a stretch to me, trying to connect stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I still want to know where the dinosaurs are and where the supers are, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because now we're throwing in rats, because how did all these different things get exposed to whatever it is that's making them super smart and more human-like? What do toys, fish, and rats all have in common where they would have been exposed to whatever, by and large, exposed them to, especially since we just talked about how vast a location they are? How did it also go to Australia and whatever ocean they start in? How did it get to France? How did it get to... Where's Toy Story take place?
Pollution. Like later on when we start talking about cars 1, 2, and 3, as I was reading through the theory earlier today, they actually gave a little synopsis to every movie. And when it got to Cars 1, it was like, in Cars 1, you see that there's more pollution. And so I think that's like, it's pretty much how big corporations are ruining our world because of pollution. So if you think about it, places like Walmart, where they are everywhere in the world. Okay, and maybe that's a generalized term. I don't know if Walmart's all over the world, but you get what I mean. It's like
McDonald's is.
everywhere. What? McDonald's is.
McDonald's.
That is true. McDonald's is
I know
everywhere.
McDonald's is.
But because it's all over the world, like they've got to have at least one in Australia, and probably in like Africa and Australia, and
You said
There,
Australia twice.
okay, there's only Walmart in the United States, Canada, Guatemala.
did you Google it?
Yes, I did. China, Uganda. There's no Walmart in France. Specifically, I googled that. There's no Walmart in
It's just
Australia.
that as an example as to like how big corporations can be other places, because by and large is not an actual real corporation. There's not a by and large in our world, but
that's
by and large is a big corporation in the Pixar universe and Pixar theory.
I mean, you
Like
could even
I'm
like
not.
look at different types of cars, like the Ford industry is probably all over the world.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'm not
what
like
kind of pollution?
I don't know. I think that's the
big
point though, is
corporation
like
pollution. Like
the humans in these movies didn't know that they were polluting the earth. But then like when you get I feel like we're skipping ahead and I'm not trying to, but like when you get to Wall-E and stuff like that, where like there is the pollution and like humans can't even live on the earth anymore.
But see,
yeah.
like, that's where I'm coming from. What thing, if you want to say pollution, fine. What pollution is going to affect brand new toys out of the box, fish in the ocean, and rats in France?
Yeah.
I don't know, mind waves. And I just killed Amber. Cool.
Okay, moving on. So we have Turning Red, but none of us have actually seen Turning Red here, and there's not really any solid evidence of how it fits into the theory. It just happens in the 2000s. So, yeah, that's Turning Red. It somehow fits in. It just hasn't really been established. And then we jump, and the next one we have Toy Story 3, which happens in 2010, which I feel like does not add up, right?
Because I feel like Andy would have had to been later for Andy to go to school.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like math does not add up right, but I don't know for sure because I don't know how old Andy actually technically is in Toy Story 1 and 2. But I feel like that
Okay,
math
so
does not add up.
wait, why? So
So Andy leaves for college in Toy Story 3.
1995 to 2010, that's what, 15 years?
I guess that's possible because I guess it could have possibly been. Yeah, I guess that math maybe makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
I
Math
don't
is hard
know.
sometimes.
But yeah, so Toy Story 3, Andy goes off to college. His toys are supposed to go in the attic, but he puts them in a garbage bag for some reason, and so his mom assumes that they're garbage and throws them out on the curb, and they have this giant meltdown because Andy was going to throw them away, and they want to go to a sunny side where they'll get played with, and then they end up finding out that it's run by this evil bear that like resents toys and humans and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of coming back to the same thing. How does whatever technology syndrome made effective, how does it, and here's a more in-depth question, how is it seemingly affecting every single toy, a large amount of animals, but it's not affecting humans at all?
Yeah, so,
Because-
and the other thing that I have a question about is, so we're connecting it to by and large is the main thing, and that, which, okay, fine, Buzz, by and large batteries. I can go for that one. I can go for the Buzz dolls being created by this by and large, and they're using this technology that is, they don't necessarily realize is having this effect on toys. But I could go for that. My issue is it's all the toys, not just toys that have batteries in them. So that's where my biggest issue of saying it's the technology side of it that is like, no, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work because not all these toys have batteries in them.
Okay, quick clarification, as I just looked it up. Even though Toy Story 3 came out in 2010, it actually takes place in 2007. So it's taking place simultaneously, apparently, as Ratatouille.
Oh, cool. Apparently I was wrong.
Well, like, it came out, the movie itself came out in 2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But
obviously I can't answer your guys' questions, but I do like how this one, when it like talks about the theory, it does talk about like the Easter eggs. Like there is Darla from Finding Nemo in it, and I guess there's a hint that Andy knows Carl and Ellie from Up, and it says potentially even a glimpse of a slightly older Boo.
Which,
Okay.
if you go off of that, means then Boo can't be Andy's mom.
and this is getting ahead of ourselves. We have Monsters Inc. very far off into the future. So she can't be Andy's mom.
Yeah.
But she's also the witch from Brave. I don't know. Spoiler alert, but there it is. That's the end. That's the end. Okay, we're done.
Okay, I'm sorry. No witch. No witch is coming back to the 90s to start a family. Out of all the places you can time travel to, you're not going to come and relive the 90s into the 2000s. You're just not.
I have so many questions right now.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Okay, we are running out of time, but Kasey, please explain Up to us.
Okay, Up. House balloons Up. Done. So I'm going to admit it's been a long time since I've seen Up, but from what I remember, we have this little Boy Scout doing his thing, comes across this cranky old guy who doesn't want anyone or anything around him, and I think, this is where you're going to have to correct me, some corporation wants his house,
Yes.
and he doesn't want to give it up because that was the house he had with his wife. So for some reason, he decides he's just going to tie a bunch of balloons to his house.
Fly away!
Fly away. And he accidentally takes the Boy Scout with him.
Kidnapping.
Accidentally kidnapped.
So, Up does show the beginning of the pollution. Like, it actually starts to show it. And, the construction equipment that arrives to destroy Carl's home even features the By and Large logo. Just saying. We also see that those dogs are very intelligent enough that they can like have full, complete conversations. Which, yes, I do believe that my cat talks to me, but it's more of a out. I want to go out. It's not like full, complete conversations.
So, again, I definitely believe that, there's some connections. By and large, definitely has a connection to some of these movies. But I feel like we're trying to use by and large to stretch and connect them in ways they're not meant to be connected. And because just because there's a company that spans across multiple movies does not necessarily mean they're all connected in the way that we're trying to connect them.
And, so my thing is, if By and Large has, based on taking Syndrome's technology, accidentally affected toys and animals and given them intelligence, if that's an accident byproduct of them using this technology, what is the main use of the technology?
Yeah.
Powering stuff.
I feel like powering stuff is not going to be a thing of By and Large.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it says like, I don't know. I feel like it's more of like a Costco type place where like you can buy stuff for like bulk,
Right.
but
So
then they also like have their own stuff that they like make.
But what is By and Large using artificial intelligence technology for that somehow has a byproduct of affecting all toys and animal life to giving them a super intelligence?
Yeah.
Wouldn't we see the product that they're focusing in on that is so powerful that it literally seeps into the entire world and affects non-human objects like that?
This is going to sound like a cop-out, but I feel like it's the purpose of these movies to be like, this great big thing is happening. It's more of like a subtle nudge, like...
that's fine, but even with a subtle nudge, it has to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Whether it's a newspaper in the background, or a TV show on in the background, or a news broadcast that you overhear on the radio. Subtle still has to be there, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I feel like this is somebody that saw these Easter eggs and then decided to use them as a way of stretching out and connecting these stories in ways they're not meant to be connected.
We're
Like,
already, about halfway through this. A project in high school. Every single project. I used to hide in of Supernatural, my favorite TV show. In every single, I'm talking science fair projects, presentations. You couldn't.
trying to connect things that don't necessarily need to be connected in the way that we're trying to connect them. Like, I could go for the theory that, by and large is a company that was created by Syndrome, and that, has technology based to it, but saying that it's the cause of why the toys come alive and why the animals are gaining intelligence, that is like such a stretch to me. And I'm like, no, it's just a company that Syndrome created that, we've seen stretch multiple decades. Like, I could go for that theory.
It could be something as simple as they didn't want to have to create a bunch of fake stores,
Exactly.
for copyright, legal issues. They got by and large done. Use it for everything.
Exactly. Okay, so our last movie for this part, and then we'll wrap it up for this part.
Okay, so the last movie is Inside Out. So I'm going to explain it the way that I explained it to one of my companions on my mission, because it came out like as I was going on my mission, so I'd never seen it. I only saw the commercials. But it's about this girl who has emotions, and we get to see those emotions in her head, and those emotions have emotions.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's actually really funny because I've also seen this thing where like they go through all the Pixar movies, and it's just like Pixar's main question is like, what if like fish had emotions? And then like, obviously it gets to Inside Out, so it's like, what if emotions had emotion?
See,
So
I could go for that kind of a theory where we're like, okay, we're going to be like asking that question for every movie. That type of question for every movie. I could go for that theory.
So
But
I have not seen Inside Out, but is the theory here that whatever has affected toys and animals is now starting to affect people and is causing their emotions to personify? Is that what the theory is here?
So I think the theory here is kind of a little bit of twofold. It kind of starts to show the power of memory in the Pixar universe, because that is a lot of what we see, especially in Riley's imaginary friend Bing Bong, who is everybody's favorite character in that movie. And if you say that it's Joy, you're wrong, although she is cute. But I think it's more of like realizing that memory is important, and also it might be like the pollution is starting to affect the human brain. I'm not sure, but I do like this part of the theory, and I will support this part of the theory that Bing Bong might be one of Riley's memories of a monster from Monsters Inc. that came into her bedroom when she was a little girl, and instead of scaring her, because Bing Bong is just so cute, they became friends.
well, and going off of that type of a theory, because I like that theory. I could go for that kind of a theory. Maybe more so like Bing Bong was one of the monsters that came after they stopped scaring, and more when they were harvesting the laughter, and that's why he's so cute and funny, is because he was harvesting Riley's laughter and not trying to scare her. I could go for that.
But I do know like the whole memory part, now that I'm remembering, my brain is remembering, it does kind of it comes into play later on, especially like with Coco and different movies like that. Memories are important.
Okay.
Speaking of,
Final thoughts here. We've gone through half of the Pixar movies, and I, at the moment, am not a real big believer that everything is connected so far, because there's just, especially with some of the movies, where are they present day? I still can't get over, oh, the dinosaurs survived, but they're all of a sudden gone. Supers no longer exist. The only ones that I'm really confident are in the same universe are the series. Incredible 1 and 2 are in the same universe. Toy Story 1, 2, whatever, however many they have now are in the same universe. You know, that's as far as I'm willing to buy into this theory. And there's just fun Easter eggs along the way that in the thousands of hours that these creators probably put into animating it, put them in to give them a little bit of like, a little brightness, a little joke as they were animating these films.
I am in agreement for the most part. There's a few little ones that I'm like, okay, yeah, there's that connection, like by and large. But we've also explained that it could literally just be the whole, they didn't want to come up with like 10 different companies.
Yeah.
And but I do actually kind of like the idea that Riley's imaginary friend Bing Bong is actually from Monsters. Like I do like that connection, and that is a connection I could get behind.
Yeah,
But
that's
for the
not
most part,
terrible.
I just, a lot of these I don't agree with. A lot of them I feel like it was just an Easter egg that was put in there that this person is now trying to connect, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't work.
Well, I think obviously like every single movie, sorry, this isn't coming out well, but like people are going to try to find connections to anything and everything that they can. And so I feel like
Absolutely.
this is a good example of that. I do like reading it and learning about it because I think it's really like my creative side coming out where I'm just like the fact that somebody sat down for who knows how long and came up with this theory like boggles my mind. Like none of us would sit there and I mean this is the first you guys are both hearing of most of the theory, so obviously none of us sit there and we're like, how are all the Pixar movies combined, you know? How do they connect?
Yeah.
Like, I've noticed a lot of the Easter eggs. I just never would have connected them in the way that this person has connected them. And, like, I'm not against the theory, except for the fact that if it's true that you see Boo in Toy Story, that doesn't add up. I'm not against the theory of because Boo had a Jessie doll saying that Boo could be Andy's mom. Like, I could see that. Like, I don't necessarily feel it is true, but like that is a connection that I'm like, okay, if you want to take that Easter egg and make that connection, that is a connection I could be like, okay, cool, whatever, that could be true. But most of these connections that this person is trying to make, I just feel like is such a stretch, and it's just not working for me.
I think like one of the reasons why I like this theory the most, and I've already said this spoiler, so I'm just gonna like hit on it a little bit more, is the idea that the witch from Brave is Boo. And I only really like that because it shows that Boo is still trying to get back to Sully, even when she's like an old lady, and I just think that's cute. And so I think that's why, well, like at the end of the day, it's kind of like the circle connection where like Brave is like pretty much at the beginning and Monsters Inc. is at the end. And I just like kind of that circle connection.
But that's going backwards. That's my number one issue, though, is you're going backwards because you
But she can travel through time.
supposedly, and that's where my question is how.
Because
But
she's a
that's
witch. Can we burn her? I'm not a witch. I'm your wife. And after what you just said, I'm not sure I want to be that anymore. Okay, I'm good. I'm
All
done
right,
now.
let's wrap up our thoughts on the first half of the Pixar theory. I've given mine I think Amber's kind of given majority of hers, and I think Jenny's
I'm
started.
kind of midfield. I'm
you're
midfield.
So wrap up thoughts, and then we'll end here for tonight.
Yeah, like I said, it's just not working for me. There's too many plot holes in this theory.
Yeah.
And there's parts of it that I really like, but I can also see how it doesn't tie together nicely with a little bow, like they hope.
Yeah. So far it's a no for me, but maybe the second half of these movies will really tie it together for us. We have about 12 more. We've done 12 tonight. I think we got about 12 more to get through. Maybe by the end we'll have a nice coherent bow on top theory for us. But tune in next time to find out.
Have a
Bye.
magical week.
And let us know your thoughts so far on the theories that we've presented. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are we thinking too much on it? Are we not thinking hard enough on it? Let us know.
Yes.
All right. Until next time, y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Peace out.